Forget gurus. Forget anyone claiming to be an online business expert without going through the challenges of entrepreneurship themselves. The Real Money, Real Business podcast is here to prove the best insights in online business comes from your fellow online business builders. We dig into stories of entrepreneurs selling their business on the Empire Flippers marketplace so that you can learn how they made their business profitable, how they overcame obstacles, and what lessons they learned in their online journey. If you want to take your business and your knowledge to the next level, you've come to the right podcast. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Real Money, Real Business podcast. We record these interviews so potential buyers have more information about the seller and the business to help them make a buying decision. Today we'll be talking about an Amazon FBA business for sale, and I've actually got the seller with me today. So welcome to the show, Alex. It's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks, Vinny. I'm doing great, thanks.
Yeah, wonderful. It's really good to have you here, and your business is really interesting. And just before we get into it, let me just give our listeners a very brief overview of what your business looks like. So today's listing is an Amazon FBA business created in December 2016 in the sports niche. The average monthly revenue for the business is $103,540 per month, and it makes an average of $28,564 per month in net profit. The assets included in the sale are the Amazon Seller Central account with 28 SKUs, a domain and all of the site's contents and files, 2 trademarks, social media accounts, SOPs, and supplier contracts and relationships. Please note that inventory isn't normally included in the listing price, and further details can be provided to active buyers. And also please note that buyers should have an active VAT number in all of the UK or EU countries where this business has inventory stored before the transfer can finalise. It's highly recommended to begin the VAT registration process as soon as possible. Head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing number 53769 to learn more about the business. And if you want to unlock the listing, you can start your due diligence if you're interested in purchasing this asset. So, Alex, that's a very high-level overview of your business, but let's find out about yourself. Can you share with me what your background is in building or running online businesses?
Okay, yeah, great, thanks. Okay, so in all truth, my background is not that extensive. I mean, I had previously sold on eBay 12, 13 years ago, and then I had taken a fairly long break from e-commerce and then returned to it much more recently back in mid-2016 when my partner and I were coming up with this business to sell through FBA. At least in our experience has been a far different experience than eBay 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And thanks for sharing that. That's interesting. So you started, in e-commerce, like you say, over at least 10 years ago. And I think quite rightly, like you said, the landscape of how things are in e-commerce has massively changed from back then to how things are, now. I mean, can you share with me, how did you come up with the idea to start this business in particular then?
Yeah, sure. So my business partner and I were we were investigating different opportunities in Amazon FBA. He had actually invested in another FBA business, and from that had a real inside view of the lucrative potential there. So long story short, we basically both saw the opportunity for scalability in the business, along with the benefits of generating revenue where much of the labor is hands-off. You're leveraging Amazon's FBA facilities and distribution network. And, our inputs could be location independent as a result, which was appealing to us.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great answer. I think pretty much in a single sentence or those 2 sentences, you've basically described and summed up the power of Amazon FBA as a business model. Like you say, it's pretty hands-off and it has a lot of potential to scale and a lot of ROI as well. So definitely makes sense. Now, your business is in the sports niche. Why did you choose to set up an FBA business in this niche in particular?
Again, my business partner, we were both athletes previously in other lives. And, like I said, we were exploring FBA businesses. And I guess due to that background in sports, we kind of leaned towards the sports and outdoors. So we were doing some investigating. Actually, the other FBA business that my partner had invested in previously was also in sports and outdoors. So we had a good insight into what the numbers translated to within the sports and outdoors niche, and it kind of evolved from there, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like you guys both had a background in it. Like you say, you were former athletes, and your business partner also, like you say, had some insight into that particular niche for FBA as well. So for sure, that makes a lot of sense. Now, our listeners are going to be wondering though, because you scaled this business wonderfully over these years, but our listeners will be wondering why you're selling the business right now instead of staying with it and growing it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've been doing this now. We've been working on this business and growing it. We didn't start selling until December 16, but we began the business itself, mid-2016. So it's coming up to 5 years now that we've been working on the business. Obviously, we scaled it. It's generating large revenues, but at the same time, we've also evolved in terms of our business acumen. And, we've got several other projects that we would like to dive into, but we want to be able to give our full energy to new projects and also partly fund some of those projects with the proceeds of the sale of this business. So,
yeah, no, that makes sense. I think for a lot of people, they usually reach a stage, almost like a cross, whether you stay with a business or you go and pursue other ventures. And it makes sense as well to sell the current one so that you can fully commit to other projects. So as well as you're raising capital so you can actually accelerate the growth of your next project. So that definitely makes sense there. I just want to ask you then about your experience with building this business. Was there anything that you learned that you would apply to building future online businesses?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Truth be told, over the course of this last 5 years, we've learned too many things to list everything here. But of everything that we've learned, if I had to pick two things that probably are right up at the top of the things that we've learned that other people could benefit from. Number one, when planning shipments for restocking and staying in stock, plan for the human environmental factors at each stage of that journey. So on paper, it may take 90 days from putting in an order of goods to it actually arriving at Amazon's warehouse, but you should probably add on 10-15% in terms of as a time factor to allow for, any additional delays with manufacturers or freight forwarders, customs inspections, issues with 3PLs, final mile delivery to Amazon's warehouses, and then any potential issues with the FBA facilities themselves, having backups during excessively busy times or any kind of temporary mistakes or errors taking place there. So in a nutshell, just allotting, if you can get to the point where you can, first of all, stay in stock and then just give yourself a little bit extra time above what is typical for, any of these delays, it will really pay dividends in terms of A, keeping stress levels under control, and B, staying in stock, which is almost as important, right? If not equally so. And then the second thing, apart from allowing that bit of extra time for the human element, is to automate as many processes and systems as possible using software. This is something that may seem more expensive initially, but ultimately will save time, which can be, it can be reinvested into expanding the business and exploring new potential revenue streams. Where we had started this business from scratch with very modest budget, we've kind of evolved pretty much doing every process ourselves, especially at the beginning. And then as the revenues grew, we were able to reinvest some of those in software of one kind or another. And that software, for the most part, has paid dividends, in terms of allowing us more time to reinvest in other avenues. Summarize, Vinny, in a nutshell, for your listeners, allow extra time for, the human factor and invest in software to automate processes and save you time.
Yeah, like you said, there's probably too much to unpack from all your accumulated years of experience and stuff, but I think those are some really good tips there that you've given. Because like you say, being an entrepreneur is not easy, always hustling and never a day off and all that. And yeah, stress levels will easily rise and go through the roof. So keeping that in check is super important. But I really like the second tip you had as well, sort of about just building in that buffer, building in that margin. Like you could apply basically to every part of the business, but especially when it comes to inventory management as well, just making sure that you add in that extra bit of time to sort of temper your own expectations. I think that's really, really good advice so that you're not sort of working hard according to these deadlines. Because like you say, if whatever reason you miss these deadlines because of, like you say, the weather or, maybe a global pandemic, then at least it helps, right? At least you can work around that, So definitely some really good advice there. I just wanted to ask you, when you first began this business, was there any software or tools that just really helped you?
Back then, when we first started the business, we weren't using any software initially at the very offset. And then as business evolved, we started to use software, for example, scheduling emails, follow-up emails. We don't use that kind of software anymore, and I haven't done so for some time. But more recently, we use Sellerboard, which we find very useful in terms of inventory management and profit margins as well.
That's a great shout out there. I just asked you about what really worked for you, but I guess on the flip side of things, was there anything that you tried that didn't really give you the ROI that you were hoping for?
Okay, so trying to hire low-wage employees, this is something that we found that didn't work for us. But hiring low-wage employees tends to be problematic, and we would definitely steer away from that in the future wherever possible. So essentially, yeah, that would be something that we definitely, suffered some disappointments from.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I think that's the issue probably with all companies, right? Making sure that you've got good hires. And I guess especially with e-commerce, it's important. There's a lot of trust that goes into there when you're working remotely. The other person can manage their time and is doing everything that they're being asked to. So yeah, really fine-tuning, getting that hiring process down to a T, I think especially important as well to make sure, like you say, there's no mishaps further down the road. So that makes sense. I just want to switch over now to the marketing side of things. What do you currently do in terms of marketing?
So in terms of marketing, all of the marketing we do is within Amazon's ecosystem. So essentially, PPC campaigns. We have the brand registry 2.0, so it affords us the ability to run various different kinds of pay-per-click campaigns, essentially. And aside from that, just having optimized listings, that's what we do in terms of marketing. We did, kind of flirt a little bit with some social media marketing, but to be perfectly honest, it really just wasn't our bag. And as the numbers show, we've seen a fair bit of success just using Amazon marketing tools. So that's what we've really built upon.
Got you. So mainly the marketing is sort of a mix of paid advertising and organic reach, but it's all mainly within Amazon's ecosystem, like you said.
It's entirely within Amazon's ecosystem. And, in terms of optimized listings, just the usual really, in terms of obviously having a well-presented listing once, people come onto the page, but just optimized, in terms of keywords and targeting of those.
Yeah, for sure. I guess then by extension, can you describe to me, Alex, what do you do to maintain the business on day-to-day or even a weekly basis?
At the present time, we're spending on average 5 to 10 hours weekly running the business itself, where we had previously invested more time in business in the earlier stages is paying off now, where we have a fairly well-oiled machine in place in terms of the operations, which allows us to gives us back so much of our time.
That's definitely wonderful. Let me ask you, do you have any employees associated with the business right now?
Yes, so after some teething issues with hiring, we have actually now found a very valuable part-time employee, and her role is largely, she's Chinese speaking, so, she's dealing with manufacturers for placing orders and communicating with them with the developments with orders, and then she's also dealing with the freight forwarders on the Chinese and Taiwanese side for us. She also does a few tasks within Seller Central itself, but yeah, those are her three main responsibilities.
That sounds great. Is she willing to continue with the buyer after the sale?
Yes, she's going to be willing to do that if they need. I'm kind of assuming that at least the larger aggregators probably have teams of their own, but if they need, especially in the initial stages, for a handover period, for her to hand over the contacts and make sure everything goes smoothly on that side, then she's more than willing to help, either on a temporary or an ongoing basis. It really depends on the buyer there.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I guess if you did stay with the business, Alex, what would you say are some of the ways that you try to grow it? What are the opportunities for growth that you'd really try and double down on?
If we were to continue with this business and not be looking to sell at this point, some of the most obvious, opportunities would be to expand into untapped marketplaces within Amazon. For us, the largest one that we have yet to enter is Japan. we're already established throughout Europe, North America, Australia, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Singapore. So Japan would be something that we would target next. We'd also look to launch our products in all of the marketplaces where we currently have, limited numbers of SKUs. In Europe and America, we have, I'm pretty sure, 95% of our SKUs selling. But in some of those peripheral markets that we're still trying to build, namely Australia and UAE, we would be looking to expand the SKUs that we're offering there. We'd also look to launch new products within the niche to complement what we have already selling. And we would actually look to do that using social media. And then also moving into other marketplaces off of Amazon, example being Walmart. And then you've got eMag as well in Romania. I think actually eMag are operating in a few countries, Romania, Bulgaria. I forget the other two. But yeah, essentially other marketplaces off of Amazon. And then one final thing, actually, which we're actually in the process of trying to do at the moment, is looking for other ways to reduce shipping and storage costs to just increase the margins that we already have.
That's great. There's definitely lots of avenues for growth there. I guess on the other side, what would you say are some of the biggest risks with this business that you think a buyer should be aware of?
So I would say that the biggest risk is that you are in Amazon's marketplace and you are unfortunately vulnerable to their decision making. That would be the biggest risk that somebody takes. Unfortunately, we don't own the marketplace. And although we have huge benefits from leveraging the marketplace, we are some degree vulnerable to the decision making that goes on, outside of our circle of influence.
That definitely makes sense because, like you say, no matter how big you build your business, at the end of the day, if you're an FBA seller, you're still at the subject of, at the mercy of Amazon, basically, and all their rules and terms and conditions and stuff. So, yeah, there's all the associated risks that come with that, making sure you follow the T's and C's and stuff. So that makes sense.
Definitely, especially when the business gets as big as it has, you want to make sure that you're compliant because you don't want your revenue streams to be at risk. You definitely want to protect those. And one of the best ways is to just remain compliant. Remain not just compliant, but on top of changes as they are happening, or preferably, obviously, prior to them taking place. So just basically keeping your ear in and staying on top of that.
That definitely makes sense, sure. I mean, last few questions from me here, Alex. How much support are you offering buyers?
Okay, so in terms of support for buyers, nothing's set in stone, of course. I mean, if we get the right offer, obviously, if we get the right offer, we're not going to sell if we don't have it that we're happy with. But I mean, so our initial thoughts were, month one, we'd be willing to commit to 4 phone calls, 10 emails. Month 2, assuming that they're getting the grips and the transfer is happening as smoothly as possible, looking to halve that, 2 phone calls and 5 emails. But that's just an idea that I've said to you. On a practical day-to-day basis, I mean, I'm hoping that the transfer will be as smooth as possible, but you never know what might pop up. Should something extra need to be addressed, we're willing to, give additional help. Well, basically, we're willing to help the buyer as much as they need in practical terms, is what I'm trying to say there.
That's great to hear that you're willing to offer that level of support. Are you willing to commit to a non-compete?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. And are you open to negotiating something like an earn-out, like seller financing?
I mean, regarding the earn-outs, we're generally looking for the highest cash offer that is presented to us. Where the earn-out is becoming too high, we would consider to just continue selling, as we're confident we can continue selling without expending too many hours, man-hours at this point.
Okay, that's good to know. So last question really from me then, Alex. If you put yourself in the shoes of a buyer, why would you say that this is a business worth buying?
So if I were in the shoes of a buyer, motivated enough, I would visualize the reality that this is a brand that can be taken to new marketplaces with an existing product line that can be also expanded upon to become even more lucrative and profitable.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that you think I might have missed?
The only thing that I would probably say, in addition to what we've already discussed, is that in terms of this business, overall it's a fantastic business, largely due to the fact that you can run this from a laptop and, just one individual leveraging Amazon's network and labor force can really grow revenue streams far beyond that which you would most likely be able to on your own without the marketplace reach and the fulfillment network that Amazon provides. So, for anybody who's keen on being location independent and still generating great income for themselves, this is a great business.
Great. Alex, it's been a real pleasure having you on today, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me, and I really hope that your business gets acquired by the right buyer in the not too distant future.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Vinny. I appreciate your time. All the best to you.
Yeah, and same to you as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To learn more and see if this listing has already been sold, head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing number 53769. If you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing, and once you've unlocked the listing, you'll be given everything you need to know about this business. So, until next time, enjoy your digital journey.